All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, the New York Jets are turning to one of their very own in order to try to attempt to turn things around on the gridiron. Aaron Glenn will become the 22nd head coach in the franchise history of the Jets. Now, he'll be the first former Jets player to become the team's head coach since Walt Michaels, once upon a time, led Gang Green. Now, the Jets drafted Glenn in the first round of the 1994 NFL Draft as a cornerback out of Texas A&M, and he enjoyed 8 productive years with the Jets, which included a pair of Pro Bowl appearances. Glenn has spent the last 4 years as the defensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, and now he's getting his first opportunity in the NFL to be the guy. But the biggest question that is going to be awaiting Glenn in Florham Park is whether or not that he's going to be able to made the playoffs. 14 years, by far the longest current playoff drought in the National Football League. And on top of that, over that stretch, the Jets have only had one winning season. All right. Now, the Jets have hired Aaron Glenn to be their next head coach, but they still need a general manager to replace Joe Douglas. And of course, we've seen this trend picking up a little bit in the NFL, whereas a team needs both a head coach and a general manager, and then the team hires the head coach first instead of going the other way and hiring the general manager and then allowing the general manager to hire the head coach. Now, that means you got to bring somebody in that's going to be like-minded and that is going to work alongside of Aaron Glenn to try to turn this thing around. So let's see who New York brings in to be that guy. Some questions that have to be asked about this team: is Aaron Rodgers going to be the Jets starting quarterback for 2025? Of course, a couple of years ago, we know that the Jets made the big trade with the Green Bay Packers to bring Rodgers in. Of course, Rodgers came to the Jets with a boatload of expectations. We all remember that one drive for the 2023 season. That was it. Of course, the expectations were high once again in 2024. The Jets nor Aaron Rodgers lived up to that hype. Aaron Rodgers had a subpar year. You might want to categorize it as saying, hey, this legend is looking in, at the fact that he's finished, or the fact that, what, he was very rusty coming off of the Achilles injury. Put it in whatever category that you want. And then, of course, subsequently, Aaron Rodgers' struggles, along with the struggles of the New York Jets, first cost head coach Robert Saleh his job in midseason, and the same can be said for general manager Joe Douglas. So that's a big question. Does Aaron Rodgers come back? And if not Aaron Rodgers, who is going to be the Jets starting quarterback in 2025? Do they go out and draft somebody? Do they go out there and try to make another trade? Do they go out there and try to do something free agency? We got to wait and see what's going to be, who's going to be calling the shots as the team starting quarterback in 2025. That's going to be big right there. Will Glenn be able to get this Jets defense back on track? Because the Jets defense is not short on talent. They have talent there. That's one thing that you could say about Robert Saleh during his time as the head coach of the Jets. He put together a very solid defense. And of course, that defense went south this past season following the firing of Robert Saleh. So it's going to be very important to see what happens with that going forward. And then, of course, overall, will Glenn just be able to get this team on track? Because one thing about the Jets are in desperate need of a culture change. And of course, it's easy to see that and it's easy to say that when you're talking about a team that has not made the postseason in 14 years. And just to give you an idea of that, in that 14 years, we've seen the NFL expand its regular season. We've also seen the National Football League expand its postseason to 3 wildcard participants, along with 4 division winners. That means 7 of the 16 teams in each league have an opportunity at the playoffs, and the Jets still have not been able to get it right. So that's going to be an important aspect right there. And like I said, the Jets as a whole are in need of a culture change. So these are going to be some things that are going to be at the feet of Aaron Glenn once he takes over. Then, of course, you've got the Woody Johnson factor. And it doesn't matter who you have running your front office. It doesn't matter who you have coaching your team. You still got bad ownership. That makes it an uphill battle as far as success. And Woody Johnson has now owned the Jets for about 25 years. And of course, I do believe off the top of my head, I think the Jets have only had maybe four, maybe five playoff appearances on Woody Johnson's watch. I know there are plenty of Jet fans who are not thrilled with Woody Johnson's stewardship with this team. But nonetheless, he's still the guy signing the checks. So at the end of the day, you got to deal with him and all of his meddling. So again, the question is going to be, will Aaron Glenn be able to turn things around for the New York Jets? I think it's a possibility, okay? Because first and foremost, what Aaron Glenn brings to the Jets, he brings a new voice, okay? He brings somebody who has played for the team. He brings somebody who has played, productively in the National Football League, and I think that can parlay into potential success with the Jets. Now, I talked about the Jets being in need of a culture change. Aaron Glenn comes to the Jets from the Detroit Lions, and of course, he was a part of that coaching staff under Dan Campbell a couple of years ago when they took over. And of course, the Lions were in desperate need of a culture change there for all of their losing over the years. And we've seen how things have turned around for Detroit. We're talking about a team that made the NFC Championship game last year just for the second time in franchise history, and they won a franchise best 15 games this past season. Of course, it didn't work out for them in the postseason. Nonetheless, Aaron Glenn is going to have to bring some of that pixie dust with him to Florham Park in order to try to turn things around for the Jets. I talked about their defense before. You're talking about a guy in Aaron Glenn that spent about 15 years in the National Football League as a successful defensive back. The Jets have one of the better young defensive backs on their team in one Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner had success under Robert Saleh. And of course, if you're Sauce Gardner, who better to learn from than a guy who played your position and did have success there? So there is that optimism. And it's not just about Aaron Glenn, it's also going to be about who Aaron Glenn brings in on his coaching staff. Looks like it's going to be Steve Wilks to be the Jets defensive coordinator. And I think Steve Wilks is a guy who has had success every place that he has been as a defensive coordinator. And I felt like he got scapegoated last year with the San Francisco 49ers because, again, I said it after that game, and I will say it now too. Steve Wilks was not the reason why the 49ers lost that Super Bowl last year to Kansas City. He had his defense ready to play. He had his defense ready to play for the most part in that postseason run for the Niners. It's just the fact that he became the scapegoat because at the end of the day, he was the outsider coming into that organization. But nonetheless, Steve Wilks to me is a guy who gets a message across, and I think Steve Wilks can be a guy who can get Aaron Glenn's message across to that defense. And I think Steve Wilks has the potential to help elevate this defense going forward for the New York Jets. I think the Jets also have to rely on their two solid running backs on this team. I'm talking about Brees Hall and Braylon Allen. I think at times that the Jets got away from running the football as much as they needed to this past season, and I think that is something that has to change. And I think the Jets need to find an identity. I think the Jets need to go out there and have more physicality. We saw them be very physical, okay, for the most part, defensively while Robert Saleh was there. I think the Jets need to get back to being physical on offense as well. Something we have not said about this team in quite some time. And that's part of the reason why, in my opinion, why the Jets have not made the postseason in so doggone long. So you figure, I think physicality, I think leaning on their two young dynamic backs, and they got to figure it out at the quarterback position. If they're going to bring back Aaron Rodgers has to be committed to the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers has to be committed to the Jets offseason program. And it's one of those things where if he's back, Aaron Glenn has to hold Aaron Rodgers accountable. Something that not too many people have done throughout the future Hall of Fame quarterback's career. That's going to have to be a given. And if not Aaron Rodgers, who else is going to be the Jets starting quarterback? These are questions that need to be answered and answered soon. But nonetheless, um, I'm not here to say that Aaron Glenn is going to go out there and make the Jets Super Bowl contenders. I'm not going to say that he's going to keep the futility going with the Jets either. I'm going to be optimistic about this as far as Aaron Glenn having a chance to turn things around. I think the first thing that the Jets have to do, they've got to compete. Secondly, they've got, or maybe second thing they have to do is compete. I think first thing they got to do is buy in to what Aaron Glenn is selling. And I think, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on this, that he has the ability to sell his plan to this team. They've got to go out there and compete, and then they've got to go out there and find a way to win. I mean, you look at it, Buffalo has been the kings of the mountain in the AFC East for the past several years. And if you're the Jets and you're trying to get to where you want to go and get to the postseason, that's one of the teams you got to get through in the AFC. You still got the likes of Baltimore. You still got the likes of Cincinnati. You still got the likes of Pittsburgh. And of course, that AFC West with Kansas City, the Chargers, and also the Denver Broncos. And we can't forget about the likes of the Houston Texans and the NFC, pardon me, in the AFC South. So if you are the Jets, you have to find a way to get over that hump. And this is where this culture change it comes into play because we're talking about now. Um, 8 out of the last 9 years, excuse me, the Jets have lost at least 10 games in the season. And when you've lost that many games in a season, guess what? That means you're picking early in the NFL draft. So at some point, you've got to get ahead of this thing. And at some point, you've got to figure things out. I'm going to give Aaron Glenn the benefit of the doubt. Okay. And I will, like I said, first things first, I want to see if he's able to get his message across to his team. And then secondly, I want to see if he's able to make this team compete. Defensively, they competed under Robert Saleh, okay, until Saleh got fired. And of course, defensively, they went south in a hurry. So now Aaron Glenn's got to try to do it with Saleh's guys on defense, but he's got to get the most out of this offense, okay? And whether or not it's going to be Aaron Rodgers or somebody else at quarterback, that is going to be a big factor in determining whether or not the Jets are going to have success in 2025. Gone are the days where you can win in the NFL with a game manager at quarterback, and gone are the days where you could win football games nasty like the Bucks did in the late 90s and early 2000s, 16-10 and stuff like that. You need a guy that's going to go out there and put up points. Aaron Rodgers, of course, in his prime with the Green Bay Packers was that guy. But like I said before, is he going to be all in on Aaron Glenn? And is he going to be all in on the New York Jets if he returns to gangrene in 2025? And like I said, if not Aaron Rodgers, they've got to find themselves a quarterback, and they've got to find somebody that fits their scheme, fits their system, and all of that stuff. And for me, it looks like Aaron Glenn is attempting to put together a solid coaching staff, and that's going to be important going forward for him. And that's also going to be important going forward for the Jets. So I'm not going to sit up here and look down on this decision by the Jets to hire Aaron Glenn. I'm not going to get overly excited either, but I am going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And let's see if Aaron Glenn can turn things around for the beleaguered New York Jets. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line to be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, and I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.